Hi, it's Christy Lister with Beyond the First Response, and welcome back to another episode and with my co-host, Robyn Michael. And we have a awesome guest today, Nate Fisher. I met him via Facebook.
Yeah, through Facebook.
Yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I'm Nate Fisher. I was a first responder, a police officer for 9 years. During those 9 years, it took a toll on me physically and mentally. I've also been in the military for 19 years now. But during all that time, with everything that happened, I'm sure we'll get into it. I attempted a suicide while I was going through all my stuff, and now I have my own podcast where we're talking about mental health amongst first responders, and I do go and do speaking events at different PDs and mental health conferences.
Fantastic. So Robyn always has our icebreaker.
Okay.
So if I don't know what she has prepared, I never
Well,
know.
I was looking for my list and I can't.
I don't think I think I have one we could do if you're
Yeah,
unsure.
you do one because I think
Okay.
everyone's getting sick of mine.
So being that you are from Texas, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Horses or bulls?
Well, considering my fiance is an equestrian, I'll have to pick horses.
I knew I should have said, do you prefer to ride bulls or horses? Rodeo or not? Yes. And good plug for her, because that's going to be actually a lot of what we're going to talk about too that has been helpful for you, if I remember correctly.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. All right, Robyn, do you have anything before I start gibbering?
No, you took my question away from me.
I'm trying to be helpful today.
You are so helpful, Christy.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. So Nate, when I reached out to you, I was drinking coffee, sliding through Facebook, and your podcast, you got onto this Facebook page and mentioned your podcast.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
A little bit of your story. And that's what really hit home. So thank you for the quick response. First of all, I never expected that. I'm in sales, so I'm always like, I'm going to have to hit them like 5 times before they respond. And it was instant. So I appreciate that. That just means we're on the right track with what we're all doing.
Yes, ma'am.
So obviously you and I talked. Robyn is in the same boat as I am we lost a first responder to suicide. So, which prompted a very deep conversation in the time we were on the phone. Do you want to go ahead and really talk to us about what brought you to where you are today and why you are still here today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it all started from childhood. I wanted to do 3 things with my life. And I told my parents I wanted to be a cop, I wanted to be in the military, and wanted to go to outer space. Those are my 3 goals in my life. I've been able to accomplish 2. And I did reach out to NASA back in like 2009. I'm still waiting for a call back. So we'll see. But that's something I always wanted to do. So in 2003, I ended up joining the military. I attempted college. I went to college, but I was there, but I didn't go, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I like attempted.
Yeah, I attempted.
That makes
college.
A lot of sense.
So in 2000, like I was there, I was in college whenever 9/11 happened, and I just kept feeling like should be doing something. So finally in 2003, I joined the military. I joined the Air Force. The reason I picked the Air Force, I always had a love for aircraft. And, we all, in the military, we all give each other crap. Air Force is like the easiest branch to get to do anything with. And I'm 5'10", and at that time I was like 115 pounds. So I was really tiny. I was like, this might be I'll go this route right now because I'm so small. So I started out with the aircraft maintenance. I worked on the Predator drones. At that time, we're the only Predator unit in the entire world.
Wow.
So our deployment tempo was very high. So basically I would go over there, relieve my friend over in the desert. He'd come home, then 3 months later, he'd be relieving me again. So it's just back and forth, back and forth. I started getting tired of doing that. Something was still drawing me to do something more. So I wanted to be more on the front lines rather than just working on planes. So I tried to cross train into other jobs that were more on the front line of things, but they wouldn't let me go because I was in the only unit that did what we did. So I eventually I just got out of the military, and it's like, oh, I'm going to get out and join the Guard so I can still serve in the military. But now I'm going to go do my other thing I've always wanted to do, which was be a cop. So I lived in Las Vegas when I was active duty, got out, moved to Texas, started applying to police departments, and got hired on one of the very first ones I applied to. So during this, at this time, I was no longer 115 pounds. I was about 125 pounds. So I was still really small. So I became a cop and started. I loved the job. I absolutely loved it. You know, there's nothing like driving fast, going after bad guys, and all that stuff. Everything you imagine as a kid that you wanted to do, that you saw Hollywood and all that, you got to do it. But then you don't realize all the stuff that's happening to you at the same time. With me being as small as I was, about 125, 130 pounds, I got tested a lot physically. So I was constantly getting into fights. And I loved it. I loved the adrenaline rush. I loved everything about it. But then I started noticing I started closing myself off from society. Because as a police officer, I always say about 80% of your contact with the public is always something negative. Because they're not inviting you to come over for milk and cookies. You know, one of my buddies said it good, like, we don't get invited over for the engagement party. We get invited over for the divorce.
That's so
Yeah,
true.
I've said in the past that talking to Christy, that people are calling 911 on their worst day,
Mm-hmm.
not to call and say, hey, I'm having a great day today, guys. That's all.
Yeah, come on over and
Yeah.
have a drink with us. Yeah, you know, you don't get that. So you slowly start having a resentment for society, because that's the only thing you deal with is negative. So I started realizing I'm really starting to close off from society. If you weren't military or you weren't police, I wasn't going to talk to you. Because every time I was trying to date at the same time, and every time I'd go out and stuff, and people find out I'm a cop, always got the cop story. Oh, I had this one cop. He was such a butt to me. I'm like, well, probably because you were being a butt to him. I was
Right.
like, and plus, you don't know if he just had a kid die in his arms 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because this is one of those jobs, like, you just experienced something traumatic. You know, whether it's a dead body, a dead child, or something like that. You write your report, then you can go back out and keep going. You got to take the next call. So that eventually starts wearing you down. I remember one time I was at the car wash where our city had a contract to have them wash our squad cars. I was like, all right, if the city trusts them, I can trust them with my car. So I go there and I end up running into a guy who I had fought a few months before, taking him to jail. And of course, he's out on a bond and all that stuff. You know, the great DA system. And he sees me, recognizes me right off the bat, started trying to get into a fight with me while I'm in civilian attire. So I just stood up, I pulled my gun out. I was like, I'm ready to go when you are. Of course, I started freaking everyone out. So I pulled my badge out. I was like, hey, no, it's okay. I'm a cop. And the guy left, and I never went back to that car wash again unless I was in uniform. So it was things like that it started really building up. During this time, I'm also in the military. I was also in the Texas Air National Guard. I transferred to a dream job of mine in the Guard. It was called a TAC-P, Tactical Air Control Party. They're the guys that go out there, they call them the airstrikes whenever, shit hits the fan type of thing. So I was able to do that and go through all that training and all that. So now I'm career-wise, I'm living it. I'm living my dreams. I haven't made it outer space yet, but everything else, like, I'm doing it. Like, everything I ever wanted to do, I'm doing it right now. And the amount of respect I was getting from my peers and everything, like, when I spoke, people listened. And I ended up being on the SWAT team. I got to join the SWAT team, became an operator. So I'm doing all this cool guy stuff. So I'm real happy with myself. I ended up finding someone to date, and we ended up getting married and having a kid. That's whenever things really started going bad, because as soon as we got married, had a kid, our relationship started going down. I was a cop in the Dallas area. She ended up moving down to the Houston area. So the reason why I stayed in the Dallas area is because it made a lot more money as a police officer than the Houston area. So with my police work, being a SWAT guy, and then also being in the military, I was constantly gone with training and deployments. On a good month, I would see my family on a 2-week period, 2 days. And so it's hard to, keep a relationship going, hard to build a bond with your child when you only see them maybe 4 days out of the month.
And do you think that that was, like, looking back on it, do you think that you realized that it was affecting you, or do you think it's harder on the family?
I think it's harder on the family. Talking to other people and people I go to conferences with who, they speak and everything. I mean, at that time, you really don't notice it's happening to you. And one thing I always tell people, like when I speak, is you can always tell the physical injuries that you're getting on the job,
Mhm.
but you never see the mental ones.
Nope.
And I had a guy on my podcast who were talking about it. It's like, yeah, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Because you just get those little tiny cuts and you don't notice it until it's too late, until you already bled out. So, yeah, I mean, my marriage started really failing because I was never there.
Yeah.
And I know she became very resentful because I'm not there to help out and everything like that. But I was working 80 to 96 hours a week trying to provide for my family. I was sleeping at work, on a couch. Things about infidelity started coming up. So I'd always have to like FaceTime to say, hey, look, yeah, I'm going to sleep on the couch. Now let me get my 3 hours of sleep before I pick up another shift. Because we didn't have much money growing up as a kid, and I didn't want my family to have to go through that. So I wanted to work and provide as much as I could for my family just so they could have anything and everything that they needed and wanted. So I was working nonstop. And whenever I would come home from work for my 2 days, I want to just veg out. Because I'm dealing with nothing but, crackheads and prostitutes and all this stuff, people yelling at me every day. I need silence. I want to be able to sit down in front of a TV. I don't even care what's on. Even Jersey Shore, one of those crap TVs, I don't care. I want to sit down. I want to veg out and stare into
Yeah.
nothing.
Mindless TV.
And when
Yep.
you say that, real quick, if you don't mind me stopping you, because I know when you and I talked before, you were in an area that was not a safe area, right? You were in one of the worst
Correct.
parts of town.
Well, the way I always explain it, I was in one of those areas where the hotels only cost about $30 a night.
Yeah.
So
And they have new guests every couple hours.
exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say by the hour, an hourly rate.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look, I was on a special unit one time, and there was like 5 of us, and one guy's like, all right, you pick a number, you pick a number, and you pick a number. And, we all just picked different numbers. And that's how he determined what hotel, what room number we would go and knock on randomly. And we would do that and find out, oh yeah, that's a woman of the night working.
Yeah.
And that just a random hotel room. And we'd do that, every now and then just to see what we would find. We'd find drug dealers, we'd find prostitutes, and it was like, hey, it was fun. I enjoyed it, but it's just one of those areas that we were in.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I always say, so my husband was a firefighter for Alameda County out here, which they aren't part of Oakland, which is a major metropolitan
Mhm.
area in California, Northern California, but they share the same local. And he was kind of in more of a suburban station. It was when he moved to Emeryville, which is right on the border of Oakland. So it kind of crosses over a little bit.
Mhm.
He was dealing with that same element that you were. I mean, they were going on prostitution calls at the hotel. Someone OD'd, someone,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And that's when I started noticing, I think it was
A
kind
change.
of up on him before, but yeah, there was a significant change in him. You were talking about the not trusting people, the paranoia. all of that started setting in. I mean, we would be out at a beer garden or something, and he'd see some people walking in with tattoos and be like, "Oh, those are gang members. I know it. I know." I'm like, "What are you talking about? We're at a beer garden. Everybody has a tattoo."
It's interesting you say that, because that's how and still trying to break this to this day, which is really part of a core issue for family, right? I find myself like, I'm not judging people, but I find myself periodically pinning them for what or where I think they are. And
Yeah.
it's not as often as it used to be, because you have to be prepared, right? You're
Oh
very
yeah.
diligent about your surroundings, and it's not as often as it used to be. But I do find that I do that still. I'm like, am I right? Do I go ask if I'm right? No, because they might pull a gun out on me. It's
Yeah.
probably not
Yeah,
the wisest thing,
exactly.
but I'm curious. But
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
is.
because
It's scary.
you start believing what they tell you. And I'm like, maybe he's
Absolutely.
right. I mean, he knows, he's the one working there. So, you know, maybe this person that's over here trying to talk to my boss, maybe she is a working girl and she's just trying to get her money for the night. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, not just someone friendly who's, striking
Oh
up
yeah.
a conversation.
But
So,
it does. I mean, you're working all those hours and you're
Mhm.
sleeping at the department. That's not a normal
yeah.
department,
No.
right? Were you
No.
working all those hours because you were trying to have everything together? Were you working all those hours because you didn't want to go home and sit in what you just dealt with?
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of
It
everything.
started out like, okay, I really need to provide. And then I got so used to being in the heightened state of alert all the time that that's where I wanted to live. And when I'm at work, that's where I have to be. Even if it's just a part-time job at a bank, you have to be
On
up
alert.
high. So just in case something happens. So I grew to where that's the only place I felt comfortable was up in the high state of
Do,
time
do
of
you think
stress.
that that's obviously partly being a police officer, but do you think that's also partly being when you were overseas? I mean, I know you
Oh
weren't
yeah,
on the
absolutely.
on
Because
the
when I was
ground, but
overseas, that's the only time I liked my job that I did. Uh, there's something about like for me, like having mortars fly over my head, getting shot at, like I loved it. Like it made me feel like having my life on the line made me feel alive.
I get that. I do.
Is
And
that the
it's
Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, is that the PTSD though? Do you think that, I mean, isn't that from what I've learned kind of a symptom because your body is used to having
Yeah.
adrenaline and you're
Oh
staying
yeah,
on
you're used to staying
alert?
up high because
Yeah.
those dumps. Because no matter how high you go,
Yeah.
the you go just as low
Yeah. But you
on the
have to
other side.
get used to it, right? You have to keep
Yeah,
going
you get
higher and
used to it.
higher in order to feel something.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then whenever you stop and you hit that low spot, you go all the way back down.
Yeah.
If you're at like a 14, you have to go to a negative 14 is what you end
Yeah.
up dropping to. And during those negative 14s, that's whenever I was around my family.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then of course they're not getting the true me and it's causing fights and all sorts of stuff. And then I'm like, I gotta go back to work. And that way I can go straight back up to that 14 again, maybe the 15, maybe a 16, That's why I liked about being on SWAT, because you don't know what's going to happen. You're getting geared up, you're ready to go, you're all amped up, you're ready to go. You get on the truck and you go to your target. And it was just I loved living up high, and I couldn't stand myself whenever I wasn't up there.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, because as you stated, you're living your dream. People were listening
Mm-hmm.
to you. They saw your worth in what you were doing, your knowledge, but yet inside yourself,
Oh, yeah, I was
you're
getting torn
fighting
up.
yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Me and a buddy of mine, we were talking about it on one of my last podcast episodes I did. And we know that the job's toxic to us. You going in, you start seeing things change a little bit in yourself, and you know that it's toxic. And it's almost kind of like the battered wife syndrome,
Mhm.
where the relationship's horrible for you. As a cop, I've gone out to many houses where it's the same house over and over. Like I go there every week. I'm like, I can't help you if you keep coming back. As a cop, we know that the job is destroying us, but we still go back to it. because we still need it.
Like
So
chaos
it's
is what you need because that's
exactly.
all you
So
know.
it's hard to balance.
Well, and there's also probably an element, like you just hit on something, because I know the station that my husband was at, it was across the street from a condominium complex that had a lot of elderly people in it. And so they would get that. And a lot of them, I hate to, Christy, like the older widows, you know, they call 911 to have a firefighter come over there. It's a true story.
Badge bunnies.
Badge
bunnies.
Yeah, like 80-year-old badge.
Senior badge bunnies.
Yeah. But they really would do that. He would tell me about that, but I forgot where I was going with this. Got me on the badge bunnies.
Sorry. I told you it was going to be a little off today. Yeah. But do they have their teeth? That's the real question.
So I remember. Thank you. You get to a point, that feeling of wanting to help people, because that's why, to some degree, you got in the job in the first place.
Absolutely.
You want to help. That doesn't go away just because you have PTSD or some mental illness, right?
Correct.
You still have that inside of you.
Absolutely.
And you want to fix this, just like Christy and I wanted to fix our husbands, and we knew that we couldn't. And I don't know, it's a vicious cycle, I guess.
Oh yeah. I mean, every cop that gets out there might be very few cops, like less than 1%, that do the job because they want the power and not because they want to help.
Yeah.
Over 99% of the cops, they have a sense of duty. Yep. You know, they want to help the community in some way, and that's why they join. Yeah, granted, we like the adrenaline, we like all that, but we want the help while we do it. And there's been many times where I bought hotel rooms, I bought bus tickets for people and things like that out of my own spare money that I was making on my side jobs, and because I really want to help people. But at the same time, I really like foot chases. I wasn't a big fan of car chases because there's just too many elements involved for safety purposes, but I love foot chases. I loved it when people resisted. I go into a call with a guy with a gun or shots fired. I got excited. I felt alive. So I was like, absolutely, let's just keep doing it. And so I didn't realize how much of a toll that was taking on me at the time until it became too late. So, so I left whenever I was going through all this and my marriage started falling apart, I left one of my dream jobs in the military. I left being at H.E.L.P and went back to working on planes. I did that so I could try and save my marriage. Because whenever I wasn't a cop, I wasn't doing my military stuff because that job was very demanding. We're always doing training, having to go out and keep our certification up for being airborne and air assault and learning how to control aircraft and stuff like that. So I was always going with that. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave this job, go back to aircraft maintenance, so I can try and save my marriage. Well, that really didn't work. Because at that time the drones were still really needed. So I went back to working on them and I was still gone all the time.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, crap. What else can I do? So I'm still working all the time, still trying to provide. So then finally, being in the Guard is, it's basically like 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. That's what they say. So I go down for my 1 week in a month, and my supervisor told me, call your work. You're not going back. I was like, okay, what's going on? I ended up getting sent to Turkey within like 3 days. There was like 3 of us because ISIS was right there in Syria. So this is 2014, I believe. So I called my wife at the time, say, hey, I'm deploying. Like, we gotta get my stuff together and all that because I'm leaving. I called my work, my police department, and let them know, like, okay, just send us your orders so we can put them in the system, and you're good. So my department at the time was phenomenal. I really love them. I still do. Like, I still consider that my home. So right before I leave, I tell my wife at the time, like, hey, when I get back, we really need to make our marriage work. I'm going to leave my police department and move down to Houston and find a place in Houston to work. So she's like, okay, cool. So I go do my deployment. I come back. I find a department in the Houston area. The hard part about that, base salary alone, I lost about $25,000 a year.
Because it's not a lateral move. They don't consider those.
Correct.
Yeah.
And well, just the pay difference in the two cities
Yeah.
is tremendous. And my part-time jobs, I was getting $35 to $40 an hour. Down in the Houston area, I was lucky to get $20 to $25 an hour.
Gosh. Wow, that's a big difference.
And my wife at the time, she wasn't working. And I was like, hey, you got to get a job. So she said she was trying. You know, it is what it is. It's one of those where I always tell people there's three sides to every story: his side, her side, and the truth.
Right.
My side just happens to fall further, a little bit closer to the truth.
Yeah.
So,
So does mine.
no,
if it makes you feel better.
Yeah, I don't talk that great about my ex, but she still is the mother of my child. So that I do have a lot of respect for her.
Yes.
In that aspect. But yeah, within a month of living in the Houston area, I was living on a buddy's couch. Things just fell apart real bad. The cops got called on me, and I went through internal affairs while I was going through my new police department's in-service academy. So I was going through IA, was living on a buddy's couch, still dealing with all the trauma and PTSD I had acquired from the past. So things are just really building up, but I wanted my marriage to work. That was very important to me. Like when I grew up, like my parents showed me a very loving marriage, how a marriage should be. And that's what I wanted. And marriage is supposed to be forever. So I was in and out of the house quite often, trying to make things work. And then things just kept happening. I went from a city where a 10-hour shift, I would get minimum 30 calls for service, to not include my self-initiated stuff, to a city where I worked 12 hours and I got maybe 2 to 3 calls.
Oh, wow.
So I was going crazy, and I'm the guy that I got to be in it.
Yeah.
And I went from working an area where it had the $30 a night hotels to an area where all the houses are like $400,000, $500,000 houses.
Mhm.
So me and the civilians had a hard time connecting, because you have to talk a certain way in the bad areas, and you cannot talk that way in the nice areas where people are making $300,000 a year.
Well, and you're sitting with your thoughts when you're going on 2 or 3 calls, as opposed to 30 calls. So then you have time to sit there and not process what you're trying to process, if that makes sense.
Yes, ma'am. So I was going crazy.
If I can ask you real quick about when you mentioned the cops were called on you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you talk to me about that? Do you feel like that was warranted? And it's interesting to me that you actually did have to go through internal affairs and everything. And I'll give you a little piece of me, that I actually did call the cops on my husband one time, and the police officer told me not to file a domestic violence report because he would lose his job. So we didn't.
Oh, wow. No, when I had the cops called on me and my spouse at the time, we got into an argument.
Yeah.
And I always keep my distance. I never get close or anything like that. So that night she had grabbed my phone and smashed it on the kitchen floor.
Mhm.
So I think my son was 2 at the time.
Mhm.
So I'm like, and iPhones, they're glass.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I got to sweep this up because I don't want my 2-year-old to walk in and cut his foot up. So I'm trying to sweep, and she grabs the broom and yanks, and I let go, and she flies back and hits the table and calls the cops that I hit her and stuff like that. So I waited for the cops to show up, and they did their investigation. The internal affairs did their investigation, said I was completely not at fault, or I did everything correctly. But yeah, she tried to press charges, but there was no charges to be pressed because I wasn't the aggressor or caused anything like that. And she was heavily intoxicated as well.
Okay.
I remember one of the deputies that went in there came back out and was like, "Can you say drunk?" You know, and one thing cops really hate is one thing that she did as soon as they got there, she started yelling at them, saying that they're going to take my side just because I'm a cop.
Yeah.
We don't like to do that.
No.
Like if you're a bad cop doing stuff, we want you gone.
Yeah.
You know, get rid of the bad ones and keep the good ones.
Yeah. I wish that the cop that had responded to us, I just wish that he would have done more. He just spoke with me. I don't think that he actually, I'm trying to recall, I don't think he went over and talked with Eric at all.
Oh, okay.
For
No,
me, it
like-
was beginning and a validation of I can't say anything to anybody. Nobody's going to help me because it's all about his job. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, we had a 1-year-old at the time. He's 13 now, but if he loses his job, I was working as well, but
Yeah.
still, that's our income. Like,
Oh yeah,
how is that gonna
especially
help?
now.
You know,
Yeah.
that's not going to help him. So
No, like the way I police, and I know a lot of police do it. We don't care what your job is. If you're a firefighter, if you're a police, if you're doing something wrong, you're doing something wrong.
yeah, well, that's good.
You know, so
Should be that way.
yeah, and that's the way it should be. Like no one is above the law. Now, granted, yeah, do we let things slide? Like if you're speeding, absolutely. I
have my
miss.
firefighter plates for a reason.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah. I miss my get out of jail free card for that because I have a lead foot.
I do too.
But no, most
That carpool lane.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you did something wrong, you did something wrong.
Yeah.
It's that simple, especially when it comes to family violence. So I went through my internal affairs within a month of being at my last department I was in.
Yeah.
I was the new guy going through internal affairs. I was like, oh my gosh, this is not happening to me. Things never got better between us, even though we were trying. And I'd been on the job for a little bit at this point. I was at this new department for a year. I had a total of 8 years of police work. I get into another argument with my spouse, and the cops get called again. This time I called them just to be on the safe side. And I went through internal affairs again. As I went to work, say, hey, here's the police report. I called, but I'm being honest. You know, cops are called. So I get called into my supervisor's office after the internal affairs. That investigation only lasted like 2 days. They just looked at the police report and called it good. But then I get called into my supervisor's office and say, hey, you know you're still on probation, right? I was like, yes, sir. Like, you know that we can let you go for anything when you're on probation. If we deem that you're a liability, we're going to let you go. And all these police reports are not working out in your favor. Okay. I was like, I understand. It's not going to happen again. And, you know, I didn't hold that over my spouse's head. I didn't go to her and say, hey, you got to stop calling the cops or so I'm going to lose my job and then we're screwed. I'm like, all right, I got to make sure I'm careful. I need my relationship to work. During all this time, I get a rookie assigned to be my district partner. He just made it out of all the training. My supervisor, my sergeant, my lieutenant came up to me and said, hey, he's very green. And you have the most, one of the guys with the most experience on our squad. So we're going to put him in your district and just watch over him. He's like, he's real green. He needs someone to watch over him. I was like, I got him. Don't worry about it. So, you know, I go out on his calls with him and we talk and everything. I try and show him how I police because I was the type of cop that not everyone deserved a ticket. Not everyone deserved to go to jail for, you know, for the small things, like a little dime bag of weed. I didn't care about that, especially if it's like a 16-year-old kid. I'm not going to ruin his life over a little small bag of weed. We'll have a nice talk with him. And then I just made it where he had a good contact with the police.
Yeah.
And that's
where
huge.
we build that
up
a little bit.
Yeah.
So I was trying to show him how I did all that. And, you know, me and him started becoming friends. But at this time, because I was still dealing with all my marital issues. I was still dealing with basically all the PTSD I had from the past. At this department, I didn't make friends. I would talk to people and joke with them like I always did at work, but I would never hang out with anybody outside of work. And cops were very cliquish. Outside of work, we still hang out with each other. Like
'Cause
my
you could
first
relate.
department, yeah, exactly. Like my first department, like we'd go play football together on our days off, basketball. We do all sorts of stuff together. But my last department, I didn't want to invite anybody in.
Yeah.
I knew I was broken at this time. And I was trying to figure out how to deal with it. And I was trying to deal with a failing marriage. So I have this rookie that's with me, and I'm trying to show him the ropes, and I feel like I'm responsible for him. On June 11th in 2016, we get called to a noise complaint to a house. This one guy, it's a house where this guy he Airbnbs his house to like rappers and stuff, so where they can have big parties, and the community is finally getting tired of it. And my entire career, I always handled noise complaints by myself. There's no sense of having taken 2 officers to do a 1 officer job. But I'm like, I'll still have him come out, and we'll handle the situation so he can get a little bit more experience. And of course, we go there, tell him to turn it down, and they gave us nothing but disrespect. So, I came from the ghetto, so a little bit of my ghetto cop started coming out. I was like, all right, guys, well, if I gotta come back out here, some stuff's going to happen. And of course, I had a few more other choice words I used.
Colorful words.
Colorful.
It's like ghetto.
That way they
cop
could
style.
understand.
Right.
That way they understood me a little bit better. So they're like, okay, well, blah, blah, blah. So we leave. And that day on June 11th, it was actually a pretty slow day, for even slower than what was normal for that city. I asked my sister districts, hey, can y'all take care of my district? Me and my partner were going to go have lunch together. It's the first time we ever had a chance to sit down and eat together. And we probably hung out for probably about an hour and a half. I got to know about his kid, his fiance. He's a TSA agent before this. So I got to learn a lot about him. And that was the first time we ever actually got to sit down and talk and be humans, basically.
Yeah.
So then we end up clearing, and then, we're going about our day. Then on June 12th in 2016, around 0300, we get called back out to that house for the noise complaint. And yeah, it's one of those, I always handle that stuff by myself. I didn't care what type of party it was, something I could handle by myself. So I go there, I'm like, I'm not going to disregard my partner, because I want him to get some experience on how to handle people that are completely disrespectful to us. So I'm sitting there, I'm waiting. A couple other officers show up because they know I'm about to have some fun. They want to be a part of it because it's,
Want to get their popcorn out.
yeah, you want to be a part of it. You want to see it,
So as they're going to get their
happen.
as they're going to get their popcorn, why don't we take a break and get our popcorn?
Okay.
Good idea. I like
And
that.
so we will be right back after this message. Our nation's first responders humbly serve quietly, often shying away from accolades and recognition. When they do something deserving of attention, most will say, I was just doing my job. They are well aware of their duty and willingly carry an incredible burden on behalf of a grateful nation. But sometimes that burden becomes too heavy. Surely you've heard the saying, it's okay to not be okay? First Help's So What campaign reminds first responders and their families that it's okay to say.
So what if I need help? I have a duty to fulfill. My family, my coworkers, and my community are counting on me to be ready to serve. I can't do this alone. I need to talk to someone.
Please join First Help as we challenge the mental health stigma with the phrase, so what? We want to remind our nation's first responders that it's okay to not be okay, but it doesn't have to stay that way. All right. Welcome back. Do you guys have your popcorn? I should say, Robyn, do you have your popcorn?
My coffee.
for the coffee. She's got her cat for the cat fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, Nate. So you were back at the Rapper B&B.
That's right. Yeah, we're out there. We're waiting. Like I said, a couple of other cops showed up because they want to have some fun too. So we're sitting there. We're waiting for my partner to show up. And it's kind of taking a while. And officers, we always park a few houses down from the actual place that we have to go. It's an officer safety thing. And plus, there was a lot of cars there, so we had to park pretty far down the street. So we're sitting there waiting. I was like, hey, it should be here any minute. Let's at least start making our way up there. That way, if any of the citizens that are watching that called us don't just see us hanging out. So let's start making our way up there. As we started walking, dispatch came over the radio. And they said, all units be advised, there's been a vehicle accident involving an officer. The officer's unresponsive. And they gave the location. That location, at that intersection, I knew exactly who it was. I knew it was my partner. And he was on his way because it was the major intersection he had to turn down to get to where we were. So we turn around, we haul butt to our cars, and we take off. I end up actually passing the other two officers while we were driving. And I believe I was the second officer on the scene. I was the first officer to my partner. So I run up to him, and I've been on a lot of fatal accidents. At this time I've been in for 8.5, almost 9 years on the force. So I've seen my fair share of fatalities. And I go up to him, I see the bright red blood coming out of his ear. And right there I was like, okay, this is really bad. I reach in to check for a pulse, and I felt a pulse. So I'm like, okay, I get on the radio. I was like, hey, I got a pulse. And once I click off the radio, I'm kind of standing there. I still felt the pulse. And I realized I was feeling my own pulse when I checked his. So I reached back in there looking for a pulse. I couldn't get one. I knew he was gone. I get back on the radio. I was like, hey, there's no pulse. There's no pulse. Immediately, the guilt took over because I should have disregarded him like I do every other time for this type of call.
But it's hard to when you know somebody. It's a different. Yes. That's why your emotions, your family member is right there in front of you, and you don't seem to be able to acknowledge subconsciously or consciously what's happening. So that's understandable, and we actually hear that a lot when we're talking to people, and that's something to take in. That it wasn't you, obviously. We know.
Yeah.
And also just from my own experience too, that that if it weren't that reason that you would have found some way to find guilt in yourself, you would have found it some other way. Like,
yes, ma'am.
Like that's what we're programmed to do. Anyway, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Yeah. No, like I say, no, because I felt guilty right then and there.
Yeah.
I went and sat down on the curb.
Yeah.
And then fire department got out there, and cops and firefighters, we always bash heads, and we always give each other crap. And they did a phenomenal job. I think they knew that he was gone as well, but they let us, not me personally, because I was sitting on the curb, but the other officers really take control of getting my partner out.
Yeah.
Of the vehicle.
Respecting it.
Exactly. Until it came time to use the jaws of life. They're the ones trained on it, so they had to use it, but they kind of like, hey, here's the tools, kept handing other officers the tools to try and pry the doors open and stuff like that. Until it came time to get the jaws of life out, and they cut them out, and they care flighted him to the hospital. That's where they pronounced him dead, was at the hospital. No one wanted to do it there on the scene. Yeah. So I ended up going to the hospital. They already had him set up in his own room. And I go inside there, close the door behind me. I stay in there for 15, maybe 20 minutes, apologizing to him for what I just did. Because I took the responsibility of him, of his safekeeping, seriously. And I felt like I failed him, and I failed his family.
Yeah.
So I said my goodbyes to him, and I apologized, and I walked out the door, and they needed somebody to go sit with the suspect. who was getting worked on in the emergency room. No one's raising their hand. And at this point, I'm like, F it. I'll go. So I went down there to the emergency room. Really bad mistake for me to do, because now I am watching them work on the person that just killed my partner.
Yeah.
And I'm just being filled with hate right now at this point in time. One of my buddies is a state trooper. He ended up walking in because they're helping out with the investigation and everything. He walks in and he sees me. He's like, "What are you doing here? Someone's got to stay with the suspect." He's like, "I got the suspect. Go."
How did they even let you do that? Who was in charge that even thought, where was the superior that thought that's a brilliant freaking idea to allow you to go do that?
There was a lot of chaos going on because,
Yeah.
we just had lost an officer. We have an active scene at the crash site and everything. I think it just slipped through the cracks. I had my sergeant and lieutenant come up to me well after the fact, after the funeral and stuff. Like, "Hey, we didn't know that you were with the suspect for a little while." Like, that was bad on us.
And that situations like that is where protocol comes in
Mhm.
afterwards. Protocol is made around that because this incident happened. They probably never had anything like that happen before. So
Mhm.
now they know.
Now they know.
Something
You
into
learn and move
Yeah.
on. Learn and move
Yeah.
on. So, so my partner was killed, and I took the blame for that. I wasn't sleeping. To help me sleep, I would drink. I would drink until I passed out. And anyone that has passed out from alcohol knows that the type of sleep you get from that is not actual sleep. So during this week is also whenever I find out that my wife is basically leaving me for another man. So I'm dealing with that now.
Mhm.
Dealing with my partner being killed and the 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 guilt from that. And now I'm losing my family. And I remember I went to work and my sergeant looked at me. I must look like a hot mess. Because he looked at me and he's like, "You haven't been sleeping." I was like, "No, sir, I haven't. Go home. I don't have that much vacation time. I can't." He's like, "Don't worry about it. We're not going to charge you. Just go home." So I was like, "Okay." So I went home
Yeah.
to try and get some sleep. I got home and I ended up getting into a fight with my spouse. During all this, like feeling the guilt and knowing that my my marriage is ending and stuff, there are so many times where I was driving where I just wish I would just drive off the bridge. Or if I did drink to the point where I passed out, hopefully I didn't wake up. So me and my spouse are getting into a fight and it's getting pretty heated. And I see my off-duty weapon sitting on my nightstand. So I pick it up, I look right at her, I put it to my head, and I pull the trigger. It just went click. So as a cop, we're trained to always have a round in the chamber. And I carry Glock. And it's a very reliable weapon. I've never had any malfunctions with my weapons. And I keep them clean and everything. So it didn't go off. So I was determined. I don't want to be around anymore. I was done. So I did what I was trained to do. I slapped rack and went to do it again. I started putting the gun towards my head again after I put a new round into the chamber, and my spouse at the time grabbed the gun, and I left. And I went and slept in my truck in a parking lot somewhere. I didn't realize this part of the story until probably about 6 months ago, but the room I was in where I attempted suicide, my son was asleep in the room right above me. And whenever I found that out, that hit hard a few months ago. So I attempted suicide. I couldn't tell anybody about it. I was scared if I went and tried to talk to anybody about it at work, I'd lose my job. because now I'm a liability. If I told anyone at work, I would lose their respect because I'm Fish. I'm the guy that has his crap together. You know, if things are happening, I show up and I take care of it. I couldn't ask for help because I was also still in the military. I didn't want to lose my military job. Because if they find out you have mental health issues, they'll medically retire you. So if I told anyone I was having these issues, I was going to lose my job and a way to provide for my kid.
And your wife chose not to ask for help for
Correct.
you.
Correct.
The one time she doesn't call the
One time.
police.
Correct. So I end up moving in with my buddy. He's my best friend. I'm actually at his house right now because I live in the country and I have horrible internet. So I use their internet for all my podcasting and stuff like that. So I moved in here. Shortly after that, they said it was a deployment. I call it a vacation. I went to Sicily with the military. I really started binge drinking there. Now I was the lead guy for my job. So I was at work, I didn't touch any alcohol, but on my days off, I would drink like there was no tomorrow. A couple of people started noticing because obviously when you drink, you start saying stuff. You have a little bit of word vomit. So they knew I was upset about stuff. After that deployment, I come back. Like I said, I'm living at my buddy's house. I'm still a cop. While I was not at work on my off days from work, I would start drinking like at 10 in the morning. I'd go sit in the garage. They had a fridge in the garage. I always made sure there's beer in that fridge. I would sit down and drink. Now, with how I thought, I was like, well, I'm sitting here alone drinking. That makes me an alcoholic. If I go out and meet people and drink, that just makes me a drunk. Completely different. Alcoholics have problems. Drunks don't. Drunks are just fun.
Yeah.
So I got online and started doing the swipey swipe stuff, trying to go out and meet people, and that's how I met Sharon, who is now my fiance. We met up, and if you talk to her, it's probably like the worst first date ever because I'm still very copish. So while she's talking, I have the cop face, and I'm listening. I'm actively listening. So she's like, "Oh my God, I had no idea that you actually liked me. It was so horrible." But I text her afterwards, say, "Hey, I had a great time," and we continued dating. One thing I always told her, like, because when we started dating, I was still a cop. I was like, "Hey, I don't drink coffee, but I can get you free coffee. I'll give you my free coffees if you date me." So
Now
she was
that is a
sold.
pickup line
She
if
was
I
sold.
ever heard one.
She was
That would
sold
have
right
my
away.
heart.
Yeah. She was sold right away. It's like, absolutely. Free coffee. You got it.
Pay attention, guys.
Yeah. But within 2 weeks of us dating, I left the police department. I needed money because of the divorce. It drained me. So I left the police department and became a military contractor. Now, when I left the police department, I knew I could never be a cop again. Because every polygraph I've gone through, they've always asked if I had suicidal ideologies or ever attempted suicide. And I understand because if you have those thoughts and everything before you become a cop, they don't want to give you a gun.
Right.
You're a liability. So I completely understand why they do that. So when I left the police department, I left the second dream job that I wanted when I was a kid, knowing I could never come back. So I went to military contracting. Sharon stayed with me during all this. I'd be gone for 3 to 4 months at a time, and I'd come home for maybe 30 days. During those 30 days, I was spending around $300 a day on alcohol, on drinking at the bar. And that doesn't include the nights that Sharon and I would go out, dancing and stuff like that, and you end up drinking a little bit more when you're out and about and having fun. So there was nights where I'll spend probably close to $700 on alcohol. So I wouldn't drink. I couldn't drink when I was overseas as a contractor because there's no alcohol around. But wasn't thinking about home when I was there because I had a job to do. So I was doing it. Every time I'd come home, reality would hit. The guilt from feeling guilty for my partner, and then feeling guilty and being upset with myself because I attempted suicide. I tried to take that way out. So that would always hit hard, and that's why I would start drinking a lot. It's funny now we talk about it, whenever Sharon finally found out how much I was spending at the bar, she's like, really? You could have bought me a saddle. Yeah. So we always joke about it, she's prior military, so she has that dark sense of humor like I do.
Yeah.
So we can
She
joke
gets it.
about that stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're definitely, I think there's something to be said for that, in relationships and having somebody that
Mhm.
understands.
It takes a special person to be married to a first responder. And
That's
I've definitely found
Thank you.
this out. It takes someone special to be able to put up with the bull crap that we bring home. So one thing that I knew that she was a keeper, because I would have nightmares. I would punch and kick in my sleep every now and then. And there was one night I remember I punched her. According to her, I punched her pretty good. And the jolt woke me up, and I realized I punched her. I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm going to go sleep on the couch. She's like, no, we'll get through this together. And she just brought herself closer to me. She tactfully brought herself closer to me because she knows that if you're really close, you can't really take too much of a hit. So she was smart about it. She knows a little bit about combat. She knows how to fight a little bit. So she understood that. So she brought herself closer. She's like, no, we're going to get through this together. And I was like, okay, wow, she gets it.
Yeah.
She's my person. So, like I said at the beginning, she's an equestrian. So she manages a barn and she trains horses. So during some of the times whenever I'd come home and I was drinking a lot, she had no idea I was drinking that much. After a while, she's like, hey, why don't you come out to the barn? Help me out here. I was like, yeah, let's spend some time together. I'll come out there, and started shoveling horse crap. Started being around the horses, helped them groom the horses and everything. And I started realizing that my bar tab really started going down dramatically. And one thing with the horses, like I didn't know I was getting therapy from it, but it was being very therapeutic. But just like service dogs, they pick up your energy, what you're putting off, and they come to you to help you. Horses are opposite. Like they pick everything up, but they don't want to be anywhere around you. So I couldn't groom these horses or anything because my anxiety levels were up, or I was just having a real bad day. So I couldn't get near these horses. And I had to learn how to, breathe and deal with me and get myself to calm down. That way I could help these horses. I can help Sharon out and groom the horses and help her get through her day so we can go out and have fun. So I started learning how to control my anxiety, to control my anger and everything I had towards me for everything that I did in my past. And before I know it, I don't drink anymore. I mean, I still have a drink now. Like I'll go out and have like a beer with a friend, but I'm not drinking to suppress anything anymore.
Yeah. Did you have someone helping you learn how to, so you just,
No, I figured it out as I went, and I would talk to Sharon about it, once I really started realizing what was going on. And she's like, oh yeah, horses pick up everything. Like their ears go back if they pick something up that they don't like from you. Because she'll have her moments where she's having a bad day and the horses won't let her. Like she just was on the horse yesterday and they had a beautiful day together, and then she's just having a bad day and the horse like, nope, you're not touching me. And she's like, well, I'm not getting any work done today.
Yeah.
Because she's having an off day. So she explained that to me. I was like, oh man, I didn't know anything about this.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, like even my mom noticed, like my mom ended up falling in love with Sharon because she's like, Sharon brought my baby back.
Oh.
Because when I was going through everything, me and my mom talked about it afterwards. Probably about a year and a half ago, we talked about it all. And I was like, when I told her I attempted suicide, she's like, I knew you were bad. I knew you're hurting and you're really bad. I didn't want to believe
Yeah.
you were that bad.
Your mom said that or Sharon?
My mom said that.
Your mom said that?
hmm Sharon didn't really see a lot of it because whenever you first start a relationship, you only put on the good part of yourself. So she always saw me as happy. And then I was deployed a lot, and I'd come home. And then I'd be at the bar drinking. She didn't know that. And when she get off, she'd either call and be like, "Hey, yeah, I just got to the bar. Oh, okay, I'll come join you." Or she's like, "Hey, I'm getting off." And I'm like, "Nope, I leave the bar." So she doesn't know I'm here. I was very good at hiding that. And so she only saw like the good part, the fun Nate, that doesn't have issues. So she started realizing everything, like whenever I punched her in my sleep and stuff like that. Cause she's been around military, her dad's retired military. So she understood it. And then things started coming out. And what really made me comfortable and get my courage to come out and tell my story is she had attempted suicide in the past. And she's an open book about it. Like she sat down with me. She's like, yeah, this is what I did. This is why I did it. And she told me everything. And like, it didn't bother her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy crap. I was like, and that gave me the courage to start to tell her my story and to come out with my story. Now, when I started wanting to come out with my story, I'm still serving in the military. So I'm like, oh, I got to be careful because I don't want to lose my security clearance or anything like that. I don't want to lose my job. So I ended up getting a really good relationship with my commander. And there's one day I was in the gym. I'm working out. That's where I do a lot of my thinkings in the gym. It relieves my stress and I can start thinking about stuff. And in the middle of my workout, I just throw my weights down. I go into his office, sweaty, everything, close the door, like, sir, we need to talk. And I let him know, I had attempted suicide back in 2016, but I'm good. I want to help people by telling my story. I gave him some of the details, and he's like, this is great. He's like, I want you to do this, but we have to be smart about how we go about it. Because if the wrong person finds out, he's like, I don't know if I can protect you. So he went and started asking his chain of command about me, but made me anonymous. So if they're like, hey, we want that guy out, he's like, I don't know who it was.
Yeah.
Type of thing. So he protected me. And then he came to me. He's like, hey, everything's good. You can start telling your story. He goes, one thing he told me is like, if you just help one person, it's mission complete. Like you did your
Agreed.
mission. So I was like, all right, appreciate it. So I got on one of my buddies' podcasts. It's called the Ash and G podcast. And that's whenever I first came out with my story, because I was a cop with him. And me and Sharon got on there. We talked for about 3.5 hours about my story and everything that happened. And then I got in touch with a place called R Watch, which is up in the Dallas area. They do equine therapy for first responders. And I got in touch with them, and I've been working with them. I'll come out there and tell my story. They do hold conferences. I'll come out to the conference and tell my story. I've been telling my story through different PDs. And then I started the podcast because after I was on my buddy's podcast, I had a couple people reach out to me and say, hey, man, you should really start your own and really like bring this out. So I was like, okay. So I started Surviving the Streets. And it's slowly been picking up. I've been doing it for 14 months now. I do 1 episode a month. I'm about to start doing 2 episodes a month because I just learned how to do Zoom.
I wonder where you learned that.
Yeah. So I learned how to do Zoom and how to hook it up to all my podcasting equipment and all that stuff. So I'm like, hey, I can do more. Because for a while there, I was traveling with my podcast equipment, setting up in hotel rooms and stuff like that. I was like, I need to get these stories out, because my big thing is like, my story might touch somebody, but it's not going to touch everybody. So I have a different person come on every month and tell their story,
Mhm.
because their story might touch somebody that I couldn't get a hold of.
Yeah.
So, and I'm trying to help break the stigma of mental health, because
Yeah.
I was, one of those guys that, I was a SWAT guy. I was an operator. I worked in the bad area of town. I did I was the cool guy. I did all the cool guy stuff. And whenever I started coming out and telling people I had committed suicide, I attempted suicide, like, wow,
Yeah.
I never would have guessed you would have done it. You seemed like you had your stuff together.
Well,
It's
and
funny.
Oh.
Go.
Go ahead.
It's funny because that's exactly what after an officer dies by suicide, they're like, I never would have seen that
Yeah.
coming from them. They had everything together.
Yep.
They had control of what they could have control of. That's what
Exactly.
it is.
Well, I think
And-
that's part of it too. It's changing I don't know how else to say this, the face of suicide. Like, what
Mhm.
does suicide look like? What does mental illness look like? It doesn't always look like the people that you're going to respond, on
Exactly.
the streets. It doesn't look like that. That the typical mental illness person suffering from mental illness looks like us,
Exactly. They look like, they're living their life nice and happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just that
And-
we've made the decision that we're going to continue functioning in society as the best that we
Mhm.
know how. So,
Mhm.
we're going to suck it up and put on a brave face. But as we all know, that only works for so long. So,
Exactly. And you might be able to hold on to that for 10, 15 years until one thing happens. Like with
Yeah.
me, whenever my partner was killed, that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yep.
And because I had so many years of buildup. And then my big thing, like I always get asked, what needs to change what needs to happen for everything to change? And I always bring up that it has to start from the top.
Agreed.
Because it doesn't matter how many guys, that are on patrol with you or at the fire station with you, going to calls, how many of them want to help? If you don't trust the people,
Yeah.
you don't trust the brass, you don't trust your chief, you're
Yep.
not gonna seek help. So it's got to start from the top. And that's what I've been trying to push is to any of the admin I speak to is like, if you want to help your people, you have to show that you actually want to help them with this and put into policy that they're not going to lose their job.
Right there is putting it into policy.
Exactly.
Because once it's in that policy,
Yeah,
it
if
becomes
there's words
normal.
on paper that
Yeah.
an officer or a firefighter or a paramedic, they can hold it and read it and say, all right, this is the rule. I can go get help and not lose my job.
Right.
I might go get help now.
Do you think that needs to come from the FOPs up to the top in your contracts, or do you think that the only way to really make it stick is legitimately?
I think it's going to be a
Chiefs.
legitimate has to come from the chief. It has to be a policy written in their general orders or somewhere, like it's got to be written down somewhere that it is law. And I wouldn't even mind it going to the state saying
Mhm.
at the state level, this is state law written into, whatever each state uses. Like we use the CCP here in Texas, which is our Bible for how we police. It's written in there saying, if you go get help for mental health, you will not lose your job.
Well, and I would even say take it a step further that it's expected that you have mandatory check-ins on your mental health.
Oh, absolutely. I think if you make it mandatory once a year to go see, a therapist, whether you're okay or not, then that takes us a little bit of the stigma because,
Yes.
oh man, I'm required to go. But okay, now that I'm here,
Yeah, exactly.
no one's going to really know. They know I just came because I'm required once a year,
Yes.
but now I can actually start talking.
But now, can I ask a question of that once a year? Because I don't feel once a year is enough. I feel that's a
Oh, no.
band-aid. But
Yeah.
and you can see that. I mean, you can see once a year maybe would have helped you, but it really would not have in that
No,
moment.
but it's a stepping stone.
Yeah, if there's a check-in, then that would lead to more often if there's an
Yeah, because
actual issue.
you can't. I don't see it really sticking right now. If you just go, everyone needs to get checked once a month. You have to go. That's not going. I don't see that like.
Yeah.
Because this old adage is still there. Like I had a assistant chief came out and said one time that if you can't mentally do this job, this job's not for you.
Oh yeah,
And
that's old school.
I mean, you can mentally do the job, but after a while, the job takes a toll on you.
because you're
And
not
I'm sorry,
processing.
like yeah, exactly. And I don't always say the nicest things about administration because I believe a lot of them get there because they know how to take tests properly and they
Right.
spend less times on the street than they do. And they spend more time in office than their entire career than they've ever spent on the street. So they don't really know what it's like. And especially today, there were cops back in the 90s.
Right.
Things were different.
Yeah.
You know, I think back in the 90s, you had more support from your community.
Yeah.
Today, completely different. Everyone's out to hang a cop. Everyone's out to hang a firefighter if they mess up. If you're a first responder, they're looking for a way to get rid of you.
Everyone's out there recording with their phones. I mean,
Exactly.
and they're just
And
waiting for you
you know,
to.
they won't record the whole scenario. They record
Right.
5
Yeah.
seconds of what looks bad.
Yep.
Right. What
Then
they want to be
exactly.
heard out there.
And then, of course, whenever it comes out that, hey, everything was fine, you know, the officer was completely justified in what they did, that part doesn't come out on the news. They just drop the story completely.
Yeah.
Right.
So then there's just nothing but hatred for first responders. So I'm surprised there's people that still want to go and are applying to be police officers now.
Right. And it's
It
not that
amazes me.
many in the area that
the
I'm
numbers
in.
are dropping.
Yeah.
big time.
In the area I'm in, usually it'd be 250, 300 applying
Mhm.
at a time. It's down to like 70 at a time.
Oh yeah.
So it's definitely affecting it.
Yep. And then what you're getting now is like city councils and stuff. They're like, we need butts in the seats. You know, we need our numbers up. So then the department has to drop their standards a little bit.
Yeah.
And so now you're not getting a good product
Right.
And at the same
to
time,
serve your community.
because
You know, you're getting the ones that you would have like kicked, like not even looked at 10 years ago.
Right.
Now the ones you're not even looking at, like, hey, you're almost like begging them to come.
Mhm.
Hey, please, we need
Giving
we just
bonuses
need-
to come.
Yeah, exactly. We need you on the street. You know, just don't get in trouble. You know,
Yeah.
but a lot of my buddies now that are still actively serving, you know, we used to get into a lot of stuff and we're always looking for the bad guys. We're out there like kicking rocks over, doing whatever we could. Now they're like, no, I just wait till I get called.
Yeah.
I'm not
I'm not
trying
pulling
to-
anybody over because I'm not trying to.
They don't want
have
to be the
deal with
next.
it.
Yeah, they don't want to be the cause of the next riot.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to have to go through the headache of, even if they were justified, being on administrative leave for a year as the investigation and the news is tearing everything apart.
Well, and then in that reality, you are on administrative leave for a year, and now you're sitting not processing or really it's all stirring and it's all coming up at the same time, and that's causing more mental health struggles
Exactly.
because you're sitting there because of the stress of the job.
Exactly. And it's just everything just starts adding up. Even now, like I was talking to one guy. He's about to retire in about a year or two, and we're sitting around, we're chatting. And he's like, "I'm scared to retire." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "When I leave here, I'm at home sitting in my recliner. He's like, I know my demons are going to come out.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Like, that's when it's going to hit me."
Whole nother topic of
Mhm.
conversation about.
Oh yeah. So me and Sharon, we got together. We're trying to start a nonprofit. And what the nonprofit's going to do, because here being in the military, being a veteran, I had the VA and they have mental health stuff that we can go to. As a first responder, when you leave your city, they just say bye.
Yep.
And then you're nothing to them anymore.
You leave the job, but the job doesn't leave you.
Exactly. So we want to start a nonprofit. We're trying to save up some money to start a nonprofit to where if you're a retiree, even if you're an active guy and you want to get therapy, because therapy it's not cheap,
No.
especially a therapist that knows how to handle first responders. That's not cheap, and you get what you pay for, to where they can come to us and we can help offset some of this costs for therapy. That is our main goal. Mainly, we really want to do it for like for the retirees, because as veterans, we know we have something we can go to. If you've never served in the military and you've been a cop your entire life or a firefighter your entire life, and you leave, you just get kicked to, give us our key back to the city. Now get out, and we don't want to see you again.
Yeah. And don't talk to any other officers because you are
exactly.
no longer a cop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we want to change that and help people get the therapy that they need once they leave the job.
Do you see doing that through creating in that non-for-profit, doing a horse therapy in there?
Oh yeah, we want to do whatever we can. I mean the possibilities are limitless. I've already talked to some therapists who are like, yeah, I would definitely be on board to help out with that.
Good.
And things like that. And we do want to start our own equine therapy as well, but getting certified in that is not cheap either.
No, I
That
can
stuff's
imagine.
expensive.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get all this started. We're really hoping to get a lot of stuff started this year, at least the nonprofit part done, because I want to do it correctly. So I want to get a lawyer involved.
Yes.
Make sure I'm doing it right. I'm not going to get us in trouble. And they actually provide training to make sure we're not going to do anything stupid and lose everything. So we're trying to get that all started up. I'm hoping to get that started this year. I started to GoFundMe so I can try and get some help with that. We're about to start selling some merchandise, like some shirts I've put out there on Facebook, and people's reactions and stuff like, which one do y'all like? So I can start producing those to where it'll help us set up the nonprofit. And we're hoping that it really just starts snowballing this year.
That's good. Well, getting it out there on social media is one of the best ways to do it. Coming on other podcasts, another best way to do it. And we appreciate
I only got on
that.
all those Facebook groups because Sharon told me to.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at promoting myself. I hate social media. It's definitely a necessary evil.
It is.
First responder thing. Yeah.
I hate it. And I even started, like, me and Sharon were talking about how being veterans, no matter where we go in the country, we can tap into the veteran community.
Absolutely.
But you can't do that as a first responder.
No.
You should be
like if you're a cop in Dallas PD, you only hang out with Dallas PD.
Right.
If you're a firefighter in San Francisco, you only hang out with firefighters in San Francisco. So that's one thing that we're hoping also with the nonprofit, we can start holding events to help people network and come together, to where if a guy is from Washington State and he retires and moves to Texas, he can tap into the first responder community and start hanging out with people that get him and understand him.
Yeah.
Right. Which is exactly what one of our big things with First Help, which is the, red help, blue help, gold, and white help. We're all under that umbrella, is really to bring everybody together, because first responders are first responders.
Yeah. No matter where you're at.
At the end of the day, you're seeing
yeah.
it. You're just seeing it from a different point of view,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still dealing with it or not dealing with it. And it's important for people to realize that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's another goal with the nonprofit. We want to start helping build a first responder community, to where no matter where you go, like if I end up going to New York, I can tap in and hang out with some cops out there. And I heard NYPD are some of the greatest cops whenever you're from out of town. Like they'll show you the town type of thing. So
I believe that.
Stuff like that, if they come down, in the Houston area, like they might have known somebody through Facebook, through one of the Facebook groups or the community, and they're like, "Hey man, I'm in town. Let's go grab a beer." Yeah, man, I'll take you around. You want to go see an Astros game? You want to go see the Rockets? Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
So we want to start building this community up, but it's very hard to do. Like I started a Facebook group on my own called FRT, First Responders of Texas. Sharon was like, "That looks like fart." So it's not fart.
It's not fart. You don't hear the A in there.
Yeah.
Fart.
And so I have about, just about like 300 members. They're all here in Texas, because I'm like, okay, I'll start in Texas and maybe it'll blow up and we can go national with it. Like people are there. I can't get anyone to be a part of it, like actually do things. So I'm constantly posting like, "Hey guys, who's a gamer in here? So y'all can put your gamer tag so y'all can link up, things like that." But first responders are so cliquish.
They are. It's like high school. It's like high school girls. Honestly.
Oh, absolutely. It is. They're so cliquish. Like they're like, "Yeah, okay. Hey, I'm glad you're a cop too, but I want to hang out with my boys that I know have my back every day because I work with them every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because your
Rather than-
uniform isn't as cool as my uniform.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do you think some of that is that trust issue too, just trusting other outsiders, or I mean, I guess
I
you're
think
not
so.
really an outsider,
Because, when you're a cop and you always hear, you're always talking crap about other PDs.
but yeah,
That's just like being in the military. We always talk crap about other units. And being a cop, you always talk crap about firefighters. Firefighters talk crap about
oh,
cops.
I know.
But
Yeah,
even
Christy and I go
and
back
then
and forth.
We do.
but
Nice.
even in the PD itself, it gets cliquish because then you have your SWAT guys.
Yes.
Yeah,
Then you have those are our K9 guys. You can't really talk to them. So there's even cliquish inside the PD itself. So it's very hard to break that.
It
And
is.
I'm learning how hard it is right now.
So welcome to the family side of first responders.
yeah, right.
It's very difficult. It doesn't have to be. I'm a very
Mhm.
strong-willed person. I'm very supportive, but there's a lot of cliquish things that once
Oh,
you
yeah.
as your first responder start kind of taking yourself away, isolating,
Mhm.
you're isolating your family as well.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you don't realize it. And the struggles in the marriages, I think we all can sit here and say, yes, it takes two people. Yes, it takes many issues, but ultimately, keeping the job separate, whatever job it is, keeping
Mhm.
that job separate from your relationship causes that conflict, which then brings both together.
Yes.
So it's neither one or the other, it's both.
Yep. No, I agree.
And how you get to that part, or luckily for you, Sharon was able to recognize that
Mhm.
because she came from a first responder family. And there are, I think, many families that do not come from first responder families, but get it.
Yeah.
You just have to believe and have faith in that they get it.
Oh, yeah. And it's just, like I said, trying to break into the community and I was part of the community. And it's still, even though I was a part of it and I'm out here trying to help the community, it's still so hard to break into. And I joke with a couple of the guys like, man, y'all are so cliquish. Like and I started thinking about it, I was like, was I cliquish?
Probably.
I'm like, yeah, probably was. Like, I remember,
Probably.
like the PD I
Yeah.
was at, like, oh, great, it's right on the border of this PD. Now we got to deal with these idiots.
Yeah, they don't
Yeah,
they
like-
aren't busy there. They don't get it.
Exactly. So,
Screw it
yeah,
up.
of course I was.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something. The whole mentality has to change.
It does. It does. So with that, as we wrap up, we've gone a long time. This has been a great
know.
conversation. So thank you.
There's still more to
we-
talk about too.
I know there's so much more. So I was actually going to say we need to have Sharon on,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
really see her side, because that would be a fantastic follow-up.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, I'll talk to her. We'll set something up.
yeah, absolutely. And then every one of our guests, we always ask, it's important to get through the week. We know how difficult it is for us to get through the weeks most
Mhm.
often, especially when chaos ensues and we're so used to dealing with chaos as we try and break away from it, like you were saying.
Mhm.
If you can just re-announce to us who you are and what you can do, what you can give us something to achieve to be better by Friday.
Okay. Well, again, I'm Nate Fisher. I'm the host of Surviving the Streets. It's a podcast. And one thing I challenge everyone to do is reach out to somebody by the end of the week, ask them how they're doing. If they say fine, if they say good, don't accept that. Really ask them, re-attack and say, no, really, how are you doing? Everyone always says fine. Fine's not allowed in my household anymore. Don't accept fine when you ask how someone's doing. And do that by Friday. And you'll be surprised with what the answers you'll get. You might actually help somebody.
You will help somebody.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Christy. You will.
Thank you so much for being on with us and being so open to
Absolutely.
the conversation. this gives us hope that it will, what we're doing here, what you're doing on your podcast, will start hitting the ones that really need to hear it and break through. At least start cracking that surface and break through.
Absolutely. We definitely need to start adding gas to the fire.
Yep. That's what
So
the
I think this-
firemen are for. Oh,
Exactly.
Busy sitting in our recliners hour like
Yeah.
I'm a firefighter there.
I think I put out more fires than a firefighter.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We,
She's the
I,
ones that call when there's a dead body. Oh, we got to get the firefighters in here to get them out. I'm not going in there.
yeah.
It smells.
I was just going to say that stinks.
Yep.
There's a bad go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes,
and
absolutely. Thank
then
you.
we will talk to you soon again, hopefully, and keep
Oh.
us posted on the non-for-profit.
Absolutely.
And then we'll get Sharon on here.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
I'll push that one.
And we're going to
Great.
tag NASA in our social media because
Yeah,
we have
we
one more
should.
thing to do.
Yeah, yeah.
One
Let's see if
more
I,
reach, so
that or like
NASA
Elon
is-
Elon
Musk.
Musk. Yeah, I was going to say if NASA, maybe Elon Musk, he'll
Yeah.
hear it.
There's aliens out there, so they might need some protection.
Right? You
might.
never know.
That's right.
That's so
Awesome.
funny.
Well,
I
it's
turned
been
off.
great. I really
Yes.
enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. And if there's, as you go along, if we can use help, we'll reach out and say, hey, can you say if we're doing an event that's going to involve a lot of first responders, which we do a lot of, then, vice versa.
Oh yeah.
We'd be happy to promote your stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If y'all hold any conferences anywhere, if I can get off, I'll come out and I'll tell my story to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal. We need to get around and start really doing those. And we are trying to get conferences, or we're getting into conferences, but we're trying to get in
Mhm.
and educate
Absolutely.
departments as well. So
Absolutely.
they need to hear those stories because you're not alone.
Exactly.
And they need to hear they're not alone.
Yes. That was a big one.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
We'll
you.
send you, once I edit everything, I'll send you a copy of the Mindset Monday. Well, I might as well do
Okay.
all three if we're going to try and shoot for, if I can edit it properly for
Yeah.
YouTube, the whole video. I'll send you everything so you have it.
Okay. Outstanding.
And then do you have a website for your podcast?
I don't have one yet. All that stuff's, we're trying to get into work. Everything costs money
Yeah, it does.
and we all have bills to pay.
Yes.
So, but no, it's just Surviving the Streets. It's on Apple, iHeart, and Spotify.
Okay.
It's a picture of a cop car going into a deserted city.
Perfect. Because I want to make sure that we put, we link that on ours so
Okay.
that they know to listen to you.
you have a
Oh,
Facebook
outstanding.
page for it though, right? I think
Yes,
that-
it's at Surviving the Streets with Nate.
yeah.
So that's Facebook and that's Instagram as well.
Perfect.
All right.
Then we'll add that. That can be the link for you. Because
Awesome.
we're trying to do these show notes that will
Mhm.
turn into a blog that we can then
Oh, okay.
tag you on. You'll just have to be a little patient as I'm learning.
Yeah.
Like, look, I just
Oh,
learned
I
how to
understand.
edit it.
I'm not technologically savvy at all. I'm
Yeah.
still learning as I go.
That's okay. We'll learn all together.
Yes,
Then
ma'am.
we can laugh, go on, see. Robyn the fireman did that one.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. All right. Well, you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.